Well, all right. Let's see. Let's just jump straight into me in the chat real quick as we're getting ready to get started with the show. And why is my camera? There we go. That's a little better. And my background camera isn't playing. It's a travesty. I don't understand. Hello, welcome to the show, everybody. We're about to get started in just a moment. The Chicago will send me their signal in about a moment. And hit the like, share the show, etc., etc. We're about to get started. It's the radio show. We're here on Saturday.
Play
Oh, there we go.
WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program mega worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Flying Johnny-less, and our dear friend Boston Brian will be joining us in just a moment with me in the first hour. But I guess I'm of two minds this morning, and welcome to the show. Hit the linkages everywhere. Oh, look at that. I've got special effects running all over the place. Thank you for the cheers and the super chats and all that kind of stuff to keep the show on the air. And of course, patreon.com/Hal Sparks. Now, the big two stories, obviously, right now is barf, barf, barf. Donald Trump having an affair with one of his aides that is almost solely responsible for feeding him his delusions. The girl they call the human printer, which has its own context, is the concerning part about whether or not she is an Ivanka stand-in or a Melania stand-in or just her wife number 4, and is just queuing herself up in the Pez dispenser of wives that Donald Trump will eventually. I mean, I don't know if it's just a rule of whether they bear him children or not. Will eventually, of course, bury on a golf course, because that's love, ladies and gentlemen. This woman, Natalie Harp, who's in the new regime change book, which I have to say, normally, I think we're split all over the place with this. I'm tortured by the idea that they should have released a lot of this stuff as we went along. But then the other thing is that had they may have lost the access that allowed them to actually get in, and get that information. It's like asking an undercover police officer to wear a uniform all the time. Or immediately call in any bad thing that's happening, even if the purpose is to get to the deeper stuff. So that's, I guess, always the trade-off. And I see that Boston Brian is having an issue getting in. Apologies to him. I can't change the linkage. He might want to change the browser or refresh his cache, which happens. In so far as the quote of the day is that I believe it's from their book, from Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, that she is fueling his delusions. Now, at this point, I don't think anybody is under the delusion that anyone needs to fuel Donald Trump's delusions. His brain is tapioca. His cognitive ability is on a hard fade, as we like to put it. But the primary concern is that as his tapioca brain is aging on the windowsill, this lady is feeding him a constant stream of fake news. That's right, the good old Trump phrase that he says he coined, which Norm Macdonald's used to open SNL's news with in the years that Donald Trump occasionally probably caught it, and that's why he thinks he thought it up. But it got so bad, and some of you may have heard this, but it got so bad that the Secret Service was worried about Natalie Harp's relationship with the president and the fact that she was in on all of these meetings. And it was, she would sit in on, on top secret meetings when she's really just a sort of a press office liaison / more attractive Walt Nauta. Walt Nauta, for those of you that don't know, is Trump's body man who was charged in in the classified documents case with him, is probably singularly responsible for flooding the server room at Mar-a-Lago. That's right, there was a private server at Mar-a-Lago. And Walt Nauta was part of that. Donald Trump, of course, pardoned him right out of the gate and brought him in as the body man. And as president, he can, I suppose, dole out tasks to Walt Nauta, and then from that, Walt Nauta is therefore immune from all prosecution because the president told him to, and if the president does it, then it is not illegal. So the very peculiar aspect of the Natalie Harp thing is that if there was ever a setup for a honeypot or a lunatic sycophant that may at some point have a break with the president and then start telling tales out of school, it's Natalie Harp. Imagine if Walt Nauta could ever be a woman scorned, is the theory. And on the I think it was the Daily Beast podcast, they were saying what we got out of this book is incredibly, like, just the unbelievable amount of time Donald Trump is spending with a woman who is almost 50 years his junior. That age difference thing doesn't shock anybody, especially in that world anymore. I know it should on some level, and everybody's just like pearl clutching about this, but can we please start treating everyone like an adult? Sorry, if you're over 18 and you can be sent off to war, you can also be responsible for your own behavior and your own life choices. The idea that you're intoxicated by the power of an individual, you get sucked into a cult, should be at some point your own responsibility. If you're an adult, you're an adult, you're an adult. I don't care if you're 50 years younger than somebody. If anything, she's probably got more on the ball than he does in a bunch of what she clearly does, but in a few areas, in the same way that I guess Stephen Hawking's nurse was more capable than he at certain moments, or the famous Anna Nicole Smith cliche that operates in these situations. But because spending with a woman almost 50 years as junior, who other aides are really worried about, who the Secret Service were worried about. And her own brother is saying he's concerned about what he calls an unhealthy relationship. It reeks of cult-like behavior. If you hear her letters to him, they sound an awful lot like the stuff from letters that a woman would write to Jim Jones or the sister wives of Warren Jeffries, or those kind of things. It reeks of that. Now, the issue, I think, we've got to decide as a country, and because we're going to have to rebuild and fix a lot of these things going forward, is that that clearance has to matter, and the president can't just willy-nilly give someone clearance. Otherwise, what is the point of Senate confirmation of cabinet level positions? Does that make sense? Why bother? The whole purpose of Senate confirmation is that the Senate as a body can look at. Oh my God, thank you, Tomal. Appreciate that so much for the super chat. Helping me buy 666 Fifth Avenue. It's still a goal. We're going to do it. The Senate confirms these cabinet officials, not just because they want to say in who's in and around him, but also to make sure that the president isn't singularly making bad decisions close to important details about our intelligence gathering and the like. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. The lovely and talented Boston Brian is popping in with us. And let's see, I think we can go straight to him if we can bring him in. There he is. Look at that. I'll have to shrink him down. But how are you, sir? Just checking to see if you sound all right.
I'm doing well. Let me know.
Yeah, you sound terrific. So, and I'm all out of frame as well. I'll fix these things as we go. There's always that the imaging of it. Welcome, sir. So, what I was talking about is like the concerning part about Natalie Harp, and beyond the silliness of Donald Trump's attachment to this sycophantic woman who is, I guess in some ways, I'm trying to bounce you around and widen you out a little bit. It's gross. It's prurient. There's always a part of the story that it has a People magazine Lewinsky kind of feel to it. But the problem is that we live in a time where foreign governments and cartels and open source spy services that work for the highest bidder and those crowds are aware of Donald Trump's, loyalty, expected loyalty from people that is so transparent that he would be the easiest person in the world to set up for some sort of honeypot situation, because he's so desperate for the love and attention and the appreciation that you can cut and paste the kind of stuff that she was writing to him and have him by the short and curlies.
Well, isn't that like exactly what the FBI came to the determination of, even as he was running in 2015?
Yes.
I mean, that's what they were saying. Not only his relationships, his willingness to, like you just said, take money from the highest bidder and to kind of do the dirtiest deed leads him to the position of being blackmailed, right? Of his foreign dealings, and like these were the things being said by Comey. These were the things that were they were looking into. Like this is nothing new. So it's just gotten worse, and he's gotten more. I don't know. You feel like he has more permission to do so now, and power to do so now, because of the people that he's put in these very important positions of power within the government. He feels like he can get away with it at this point.
Sure.
But you're 100% right as far as his willingness to take kind of the dirtiest dollar that he possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm more concerned at this point about the kind of just dough-headed desperation of his own mental state, because in all seriousness, as silly and honeypotty as this whole thing is, and I do mean potty, the real concern is that she just reeks of another backdoor, in the same way that we found out about Tulsi Gabbard. We've got to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about Tulsi Gabbard's exit, her last kind of like signal flare to the maggots, with this nonsense about Fauci, which again is going to and has gone nowhere. And that's just going to make them more angry. The lack of prosecutions. Why are there no Democrats in cuffs? Boston Brian. We will find out after we come back from the break. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Good to see you, my friend, and there you are, and welcome.
You as well. How's things? Sorry it took me. I promised I was ready well before showtime, but for some reason your links just do not like me.
It's my links.
Or anything that I do.
Yeah. It's a sausage thing.
All of a sudden.
I know it's tricky. Yeah.
To what you were just saying on the show, though, what's the kid on Twitter? Matt. He's got the beard. I can't think of his name now. He's been talking about how these like ridiculous prosecutions that the administration's been talking about have led to nothing time and time again. What's the guy's name? He's a wicked transphobe. Matt
Walsh.
What the hell? Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh.
Yeah.
So he's gonna be if he hasn't said something already, he's been kind of one of the prominent figures over there, being like, okay, you can say it is one thing, and you can announce this and that and the other thing, but if it's not leading to prosecutions and these people actually going to jail, which we've seen time and time again, it doesn't. Whether you're talking about Comey or you're talking about Letitia James, I mean, there's a bunch of them that you can go down the line, but he's going to be one of the first people, I'm sure, to be like, well, if we're going to start going after Fauci, we better see results, which they're assuredly not going to get.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this particularly. So I'm going to hold on to that. But I have my reasoning as to why I think that is. And when we come back from break, it's essentially that the discovery process would destroy Trump, that it would prove his guilt. It's why he can't. So
it seems to be like that. Why there's so many people kind of desperate to have Trump sue them at this point. They're almost begging for him to draw a lawsuit and to get that paper in the mail. Like, okay, let's go. If you want to go, let's go.
And the irony of I want to save this for the air. So give me 1 second, because this is kind of crucial to the whole Uh,
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
so in the middle,
Debunking the lies your uncle saw on Facebook. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So, yes, that's right. My bad. I was overexcited to get back on with Boston Brian. So on the one hand, the maggots seem desperate to see Fauci and Obama and Biden and everybody else, not whoever, in cuffs. Why are we not seeing any, the same frustration I think a lot of us had with the slow walking of the DOJ under Biden, mainly for I honestly think let's all put this behind us with the idea that Donald Trump really isn't going to come back, that ship has sailed. So beating that dead horse is just a way to drive like maggots crazy and cause some violence in the country. So I think they were afraid to prosecute and go after some of these people in the harshest way possible and really dig in, because they were afraid of the sort of almost Timothy McVeigh level blowback they would be concerned with because of the rhetoric online. So I think they were tiptoeing with the assumptions like, we got a decade to get this guy. He's not going to run for president again, and the maggots aren't going to show up. And certainly the Elon Musks of the world aren't going to dump $200 billion into his campaign so that they can get everyone's Social Security information and become the world's first trillionaire. Coincidence? I think not. So, but the big cry out from the maggots, and you were bringing up Matt Walsh during the break, who's the guy who did the What is a Woman documentary, and he's spending a lot of time kind of doing these like obvious and pathetic attempts at redressing or readdressing American history, and and kind of throw rocks on one side of the scale instead of telling a balanced tale, which is what we actually all need. That he's been crying out for this. Like, why aren't we seeing any of these people frog march? Why isn't Fauci in cuffs? Right. That's one of the big things from this. And the other one is the Russia folks. Mostly Matt Walsh and those guys are about like, why don't we go after those guys? And there's this odd suspicion that it is tied to a lot of things about like, why isn't Trump looking into this stuff? The Butler shooting, and it gets real sketchy real fast with these folks because they're all paranoid. So I think there's a multitude of reasons besides just being incompetent, which is, sort of the bonding them they can't spell when they're writing these legal briefs, when they're bringing stuff in and they haven't even spell checked the damn thing. They're using like
they can redact like no other though, Hal.
Oh my God.
Some of the best redactors out there.
Yeah. Well, and then they're complaining. I love this because the parallel to this week was really stood out. Was it who finally did they get a guilty plea from? Was it Comey? No. Was it Fauci? No. Did they put, they managed, but it was John Bolton,
Yeah.
a former Trump aide who he brought in, who no Democratic president would go anywhere near, who was, I mean, he's been one of the most awful people. I think did you have a Marjorie Taylor Greene moment with him when he would start going against Trump and you're like, ugh, this dude, I like this broken clock moment, like you don't get points for waking up this late.
I feel like I have to put up like a sign every time I bring up Marjorie Taylor Greene or if Tucker Carlson has something to say against Donald Trump, to reiterate their history, to reiterate their past, and just how culpable they are of the situation that we're in right now. So I'll happily use their words against their side, because that's typically what the people on that side will respond to, as opposed to, a dumb lib or, a progressive or whatever, you espouse yourself as, right? So they're probably more apt to at least listen to the clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene saying something, even if they don't like it or don't believe it, right? They're probably a little bit more willing to at least listen to that part than they are there. But I always like to reiterate and tell people, like, we're a big tent, but it ain't that big.
Right, yeah. John Bolton is under his plea agreement. He could serve up to 5 years in jail. He would pay $2.25 million in fines immediately upon the plea agreement. He had to write a check for that, which the idea that a guy like that has that kind of money is bizarre in and of its self. Not that somebody else isn't going to pay that bill for him, whether it's a buddy in the peanut crowd who's a billionaire, that kind of thing, just writing a check and having it done. But to me, I mean, like, that sounds like a sentence for the stuff he did under Bush 1 and 2, right? And so, fine, good riddance to bad rubbish. The irony, though, is that he's pleading guilty to the exact same stuff that Trump did, that as a private citizen, no longer in office, he had boxes and boxes and boxes of the stuff. Had he not become president again, he would have gone to jail for that stuff with his plea agreement would have had to have been higher than that. It would have been, a 10x of that, whether he was going to get 50 years or not, but at least 10.
I feel like this is him just throwing the red meat to the wolves a little bit. I mean, along the lines of Matt Walsh.
It's his
I brought that up
guy.
because he seemed to recognize that it's just kind of rhetoric and a bunch of hooey that this administration keeps saying, that they're going to prosecute, they're going to arrest, these people are going to go to jail. And he's like, fine, if you're going to say it, do it. And if you're going to do it, go through with it. Go the length, go the whole football field. You know what I mean? Don't just announce the prosecution and then have it filter away and then nothing comes for it, like we've seen time and time again they do. But this seems to be like the bottom of the barrel for them, because Bolton's been on that list of people that, the maggots and Trump himself have wanted to go after because he had, a lot of negative things to say after the first administration. There's a whole group of people that worked with Trump or around Trump that, right away will
start telling the truth.
What the hell is going on with this guy? You know what I mean? And
because they thought it was in the rearview mirror.
Kind of like, we can't get the Democrats, we can't get Fauci, we can't get Comey, we can't get these people, so we'll give you John Bolton. You know what I mean? Settle on that a little bit, type of thing.
Okay. All right. Not only are they not going to get a conviction of Fauci, not only are they not going to frog walk anybody in the Obama administration for Russia, and all this stuff. It was an Obama-appointed judge that oversaw the plea agreement with John Bolton, for crying out loud. It's embarrassing. Like, this person, if it wasn't an appointee of Barack Obama, who probably, if they have any kind of bias at all, would be against someone like John Bolton, they wouldn't have gotten, like, if it would have been a Trump appointed judge, I got to tell you, they probably would have, like, given him 5 years possible and then just let him walk from it with a finger wag.
Right. Well, that's the hypocrisy of them celebrating this and using it as their propaganda victory to say, look, this is happening to all of our enemies. It's like, well, do you actually understand, like, the
he was your employee. He was your guy. I don't get it. How's that a win? We finally got someone. Who? Someone I
Only
chose.
The best people, Hal.
I know. Hashtag the best people. It is so insane. But the big reason why he obviously is not going to go after the Russia stuff at all is because the discovery process would ruin him. Maggots, I'm sorry to tell you, get used to the idea, but the reality is that anybody who would be charged with any of these kind of crimes in court would have the due process available to them. And all of them would demand discovery from Donald Trump around these things. And either he would have to give it up and prove himself guilty of exactly what they were claiming he was doing, or he would have to refuse as executive privilege, which would get the case thrown out.
Right. So
and he knows
like
it.
You said, that's why it's just the announcement. It's like I said the other day on the show, the Roy Conification of our government. You know what I mean? That's pretty much what he's used. That the things that he was taught by Roy Cohn. If you lose, tell everybody you won. If you lose in a court case, go out there and say that the judge was corrupt. If there's a bad story out there in the press, say it's fake press. Or say call them corrupt, or bring up something in the past that happened with that author, a journalist, whatever it may be. That way you can cloud or muddy the waters a little bit, to the point where enough time will pass where hopefully people will forget, or another thing will happen, something else, just that it's that exact same thing, and he's turned that into how he's now utilizing this government as well.
Yeah, and by the way to bring up by accident the if you're losing, tell everybody you won anyways. Welcome to the ridiculousness of the MOU, which is falling apart like we all said it would. I'm sure you have been hair pulling about this as much as I have, that this ridiculous, like, we'll deal with that later agreement, where 14 points in this thing. The first one mentions Lebanon 3 times, and Trump's like, that's not even in it. It's in the first paragraph. The last paragraph, the last clause, the 14th clause, says that until I think like 4, 5, 6, and 10 are implemented, the rest of them are just maybe we'll get to it. Blah, blah. And the ones that are guaranteed in the final clause are all the ones about sanctions relief and release of the funds to that are being held.
You know those signs in factories and like warehouses that say like this many days since our last injury? Like you need one of those. It's like this many days since bombs and missiles have dropped during a ceasefire or during some negotiations. Like
you're gonna have to switch it to minutes.
Right under that, the percentage and the chance that we actually get a finalized agreement out of this, like 0 and 0, 0 days since bombs, 0 days since 0% chance we get this finished. But yeah, you're right. We've been screaming from the rooftops over on Blunt Politics there about just how on a knife's edge this whole thing is. Like even when they first announced it to like the Friday when they said it was going to be signed, like that is a lifetime for Donald Trump to get on Truth Social and say he's going to eliminate Iran, or the negotiators they're not gonna make it back to their country. Like that has a big ability to change things drastically, dramatically, and very quickly as it pertains to the MOU. And like you brought up, the whole Israel-Lebanon situation. Like it's pretty clear what the Iranians have been saying the whole time, right? Seems to me from what we've done in our coverage on Blunt Politics, like the point, the data set and the points that the Iranians have asked for time and time again and said that this will be the stipulations that we're talking about have not really changed. Meanwhile, the United States and their goals and what they are trying to justify has changed time and time again. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's crazy how different and drastic the two sides are when something is announced. It's like it's amazing how separated the two sides are. It's like, are you guys actually even talking?
Well, here's the thing. Maybe this ties back to the Natalie Harp stuff. Maybe she's handing him a copy of the deal that just looks like that just has like a unicorn farting glitter on top of it, as opposed to the actual details of it. Because we talk about with Phil, and he'll be joining us in the second hour. We talk with him all the time about if the czar only knew, right? And I think Trump is trying to lasso that a little bit. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more. Boston Brian, Blunt Politics has a new show every Sunday you should check out. And a couple other times a week, but check it out. We'll be back right after this. So, sorry, I went over there because I was getting very excited about this. But
Oh, good. And you're 100% right, because there was a Batya Ungar Sargon couple clips of her that were going around, I think last week, that it was like, oh my God, if Trump only knew the pressure is being put on the American people, and if only we could get through to him to let him know how much, American families are suffering. And it's like, oh my goodness, if he just stopped listening to J.D. Vance. And it's like, are you like, that's literally if the Tsar only knew in written form today.
But it's so lame because in the one hand, with the Tsar and to some degree with Putin, there's these two ideas that Putin is too busy dealing with the seriousness of the war and other stuff to be aware of these other issues, or the Tsar was just so isolated or so focused on his people, that there's so many problems, and so he's so focused on some other problem. If he only knew about this problem, he would take care of it. Trump sells to all of his idiot supporters that he knows more than anybody. He's got the greatest memory of anybody. He's he knows more about ISIS than the generals, and more about syphilis than Ronnie Jackson. Which
plus the line that says I don't care about the American people and what they're spending, like his little quote, or I love inflation, like that doesn't go to prove that he doesn't know about these things.
This is so well, I want to save some of this for the air, but the deal itself.
How have you been otherwise? Just so you don't get into the content,
I'm in the tumble dryer right now, but we're getting near the end of summer's radiation. This is her last week. The couple weeks afterward are what wear you out. So just gotta. I'm like getting my shows out of the way.
My best.
I will.
Please and thank you.
Yeah. let's go this guy. I want to bring up because we've been. I mean, there have been like effectively open bombing. Let's go back to here.
See, now we have to ask once again: are we talking about the Strait of Hormuz or Ukraine?
Yeah, right.
WCPT 820.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So we find out this week that the Iran strikes did $400 million worth of damage to the U.S. headquarters, the Fifth Fleet's headquarters in the Middle East, and they have been lying about it. The Trump administration has been lying about the effectiveness of these attacks, just in the same way that Trump is lying about them not having an air force. A good portion of their airplanes are parked in Pakistan. That's part of the deal Islamabad made with Iran to get them to the table, was allowing them to park their warplanes in Pakistan so the U.S. could not bomb them and keep them safe. They have missile launchers just over the border. They put stuff into just across the border into Afghanistan because they know nobody's there. And, we're bombing inside the borders of Iran in some cases, but we're not going to go outside and start bombing another country. So they make a little deal to park the stuff. And the intelligence community knows this. I'm certain at some point somebody's telling Hegseth or Trump about this. But, I don't know that Trump believes they still have anything. But meanwhile, we have there have been, I guess, we're on our third tat in the tit for tat that's going back and forth. That we're openly bombing inside them, and they are openly striking ships right now. This is not like a rando loose drone flying into a boat because some IRGC soldier didn't get the memo.
No, they made very specific radio addresses stating that you will not be taking the Omani route through the Strait of Hormuz, and any ship that's thinking about going through there or is attempting, you can turn around now or you're just not going to make it. If you try it, we're going to be firing upon those ships. And that's exactly what they did. They're basically, funneling the ships closer to the Iranian side, whatever they, portion that they control in conjunction with the Omanis. And that's leading up to and showing everybody the control of the Strait of Hormuz. So that's going to be, whether it's insurance or whether that's fees and tolls or both. Like, that's what this is setting up at this point in time. So it's, it's crazy to still be talking about, ships being hit in the Strait of Hormuz. It's crazy to still be talking about the United States bombing inside of Iran at this point in time, and nobody really addressing the ridiculousness of basically everything that's going on. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not nobody, but obviously the people in the government and the White House, still trying to tell you that everything's all set, everything's fine. It was just, a minor response, and everything's, supposed to go this way. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's crazy.
And last night, JD Vance was on Bill Maher for the sit down interview, and maggots were touting this as that like Maher is now a JD Vance fan or something along those lines. But the irony is that in a comedy show, at least in theory, the quote he said was the U.S. wins, quote, either way regarding negotiations with Iran. This is part of what Trump is saying. We win by peace or we win by blowing them to smithereens, right? These are our two options. And then he goes, if we make the final deal, then great. If we don't make the final deal, their nuclear program is still destroyed. They're still much weaker as a country. So my attitude is America wins either way. No, on so many fronts.
Crazy and insane. You know what I mean? So not only are we not getting
and
leading to the non-nuclearization of the Iranian population, but it's also he doesn't care about how many people have to die to not achieve that. You know what I mean? So that's basically what he's stating there.
Yeah, and again, he's largely parroting what Trump said with the idea that to create the illusion that he leans towards peace. That he is the one that, is kind of creating this, if he had his druthers and Trump did this, his way, it would be that much more special, right? That we wouldn't have to worry about any of this. The details of it would we'll take whatever time it takes to negotiate things, and we don't really require it. We don't get any oil through there, even though fertilizer comes through there, even though you're choking off the countries because stuff can't get in as well as get out. The only oil ships that are getting out are Iranian ones going to China. And Trump's like, more oil's gone through there. Yes, all Iranian oil. And the cargo ships that they've been hitting aren't oil tankers. You'll notice they are not calling them tankers. They're just like, they might as well be full of dates and rugs, and I don't know if the Saudis are working on their own computer chip or I don't know, food stuffs, whatever. Who cares? But the point is, it doesn't matter that it's not oil. And if you have control of the Strait of Hormuz, you not only you're allowing Iran is effectively now the only business in town in oil in the Strait of Hormuz. The only oil that is getting through is Iranian. And Trump just seems to say
that is the nuclear weapon now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Trump has afforded them this geopolitical international stage nuclear weapon to wield and to use whenever they feel like they're being threatened or another country is overstepping a treaty or whatever whatever it may be. They have now been afforded this opportunity, and people have to respect that. That's something that I've tried to push on the show. Beyond the 300 billion, beyond the 24 billion in frozen assets, beyond the ability to continue to sell oil, beyond the relieving of sanctions, beyond the fact that, like you pointed out, Hal, it's a lie that they have no missiles, it's a lie that they have no drones, it's a lie that they have no ships, it's a lie that they have no air force. Those are all lies. But at the same time, exactly what we were just talking about is true too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like all of the things at the same time are almost 180 degrees opposite of what the Trump administration is trying to tell you is what's going on here. It's insane to continue to see what's taking place in reality on the ground, and then hear how it's trying to be sold here by our government, by this administration.
Right. And this has to be running aground with the general MAGA tree, one would think. You know what I mean? They have to be aware that whatever story that maggots online are telling their supporters, or the Walshes of the world, or Posobiec, who is basically, he and Benny Johnson are doing Caroline Leavitt's job while she's out of town. It is so ham-handed and dumb. It's right up there with Bongholio's daily, today is whatever date, and Donald Trump is the president, and that's a dunk, and he's got that on autoplay. You know what I'm talking about? It's so lame, and you're like, dude, that is not sufficient to make people, feel better about the cost of living. Donald Trump had a secret meeting about affordability allegedly this week, and slept through it, obviously. Right. He's clearly, and I don't know if they've just installed a toilet in the Oval Office behind the desk, because he just sits there during all these meetings. He doesn't get up. They don't ever show him getting up out of a chair or sitting down in one if they can help it. The only time he's done,
and not showing him in a wheelchair, or
yes,
showing them that he's holding on to a railing, or he has a soldier next to him that he's kind of leaning up against. That's kind of the levels.
Or Modi, when he literally needed a hand up from Prime Minister Modi to walk up one step, and his fixation on how old and weak Joe Biden is very telling in terms of his own concern about his own ability, and.
And coming back to bite him.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and it's coming back to bite him in the rear end pretty severely. His mocking of Joe Biden and bringing up age and tripping and falling and, not being able to speak and stuff. It's like, well, now you've made people focus upon that even more, and you're worse than anybody would have ever seen in all of those different fields. So,
dear God. And again, this more and more, the way they're handling this is to surround him with sycophants, is to surround him with, people who will just tell him what he wants to hear. And that is it's bad policy. It's bad governing. It's immature. It's childish and dumb. It's absolutely a sign of weakness. But it's also, he needs to know the real details of what's going on. Even if he chooses to lie to the American people, he should at least know that he's lying. And I'm not sure. I think they're trying to. They're not dissuading him of his misapprehensions about this agreement. No one is leaning in and going, actually, boss. And J.D. Vance basically just carrying water for him last night on Mara or on these other things isn't helping either. But what are they all going to do? They're either deathly afraid of him, or more likely the maggots that are around him and, what price they will have to pay. But as if there's not going to be a price to pay when this doesn't work out.
Well, we've seen this time and time again throughout history. Yes men, people that surround themselves with yes men, people that won't tell them the truth of what's going on in reality for whatever reason, because they're in fear or because of retribution. Like, you end up just leaving yourself out in the dark. You increasingly become unaware of the reality of the situation, which makes you increasingly unable to make decisions
You're
that
useless.
would help the current situation. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, when Hitler used to go to, Berchtesgaden, or, where he'd be way out in the middle of nowhere to try to remove himself, just kind of getting the propaganda, nobody telling him the truth, everybody trying to feed him this line or the other line, and he's sitting there jumping up and down thinking things are going great. Meanwhile, you got, hundreds of thousands of them dying in Stalingrad. I mean, all across the Russian front. He just wasn't being told these things to the extent, at least, that they were actually happening, and it's leading him to make worse and worse decisions that lead him into further and further ruin.
And by the way, welcome back, Hal Vickery, from your trip overseas. We're glad to have you back in the chat room. Always a pleasure, sir. And we're glad you made it back safely. And I'm extraordinarily jealous. I'm looking forward to taking my boy to Ireland at some point in the next couple of years when he's, 16 or 17 years old, when he can truly appreciate it. And because a good portion of our people are from there, So they are circling the wagons around Donald Trump, clearly, around his health, around his perceptions of the world. And they're, I think, hoping that either his magical thinking somehow does work out or he keels over. And up till the moment he does, they were all doing exactly what he wanted. And then if he dies or is incapacitated or kicked out, by the 25th Amendment, by those very same people, they could say right up to the moment he had his stroke, we all believed it. And this is what he would truly want. Like the Mormon tablets. They just like open up the thing and go, it's the MAGA doctrine is written here. The words sometimes change on the tablet, and we're doing this. There's a new version of America First, and we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Look at that. Thank you, Erica, as well, for the super chat. Good morning to you as well. And Frank said he found $2 in your couch. I don't know what he was doing in there, but it's none of my business. And I hope you guys are very happy together.
My little running joke on the show. I always say, I ask if you got a couple quarters in the couch cushions, you can send into the Venmo.
There you go. It works. Absolutely. There you go. And Dolly Da Vinci, thank you so much for the super sucker sticker, I guess. Well, I hope so. I don't know. Either way, works for me. There you go. And so yeah, hit the subscribe, everybody. Our numbers are growing. We're getting near that 100K. I know it's right around the corner. Damn it, it's happening. And I just want the little plaque.
Congratulations,
I want the
brother.
little.
You deserve it. Very deserved.
I want it. I want the little plaque. 100,000. All. That thing you see when people go. According to the algorithm, 70% of my watchers aren't subscribed. That's true.
Right.
I don't need all of you to subscribe, just the ones that ain't.
Right. No.
Right. And once we clear that 100,000, apparently, then that's when YouTube starts taking you seriously, I suppose. But
hopefully it's a little less than that.
Yeah, right. Well, there's stages.
I'll be about 87 by the time I get to 100,000.
That's the spirit. Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. We're checking in on Chicago's there. Yeah. Okay. They muted themselves. All right.
But
I'm gonna ask.
Phil should have a lot to be.
Yes. We've got plenty to cover with that.
Or happy about, but to be, things heading in the right direction. We'll say. You know what I mean? I don't want to.
Well, the 44.
Play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive
keep that
talk
till after the break when he's with us.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So, as I like to ask guests on, and Boston Brian's not on me on my show on the regular, so I want to bring this up. Is there a story or an element, not Ukraine related, because we'll talk about that with Phil, that's been sticking in your craw lately, or a detail you think is overlooked, or a story that's particularly galling to you that you think isn't getting enough attention?
Well, I mean, I know it's getting enough attention, but my first thought, because it just recently happened, was the blatant racism by Megyn Kelly and others just like her. I know there was Kyle Higbee on Newsmax that were rejoicing over the TPS ruling by the Supreme Court, and wanting to kick Haitians out of the country and telling them that they haven't assimilated to a proper degree. And she used the words dilute, which I would just continue to reiterate is very Nazi-like rhetoric and
totally
very 1935 Nuremberg law-like, where they basically stripped all the Jews of their German citizenship, said that they couldn't marry other German citizens, they couldn't own property. Like, it just when they again the rhetoric espoused by not only Hitler in Mein Kampf but also Donald Trump on several times, where he said that the immigrants coming across our border will be poisoning the blood of our people, or calling them vermin or disease-ridden parasites. I mean, there's a whole list of things, but I just continue to be shocked that not only could they espouse these things, but in the very next video be so so quick to complain and cry about everybody else calling them fascists and Nazis. And this is the stuff that they're saying. You know what I mean? So it's like, you guys give us the ammunition, we just load the weapon. That's all.
Right. So both the rulings this week, having read through effectively the briefs in this, are is Donald Trump basically, I think, trying to do cleanup with MAGA, because the temporary protected status is precisely that. It is the same issue we have with DACA in many ways, is that in a rush, the activist class, in a rush to get these things done, oftentimes settle for an executive order or a temporary solution. The problem with those is that you got to be vigilant in who you vote for and who you allow in there, because if they have a chance to run it, they'll focus in on that temporary word instead of the protected status part. And Donald Trump famously gave TPS protections to Venezuelans as his last official act leaving office the last time. Why did he do that? Because he and many others were under the belief system that any immigrants that were in the country, they would lay at the feet of the Biden administration and sell this open border nonsense. But the problem he has with his sales pitch about these 25 million, 35 million, some people say it's even higher business that he says, is that there are by no means that many people. We had a recidivism issue at the border because of Title 42, where people could come in and immediately, if they got kicked out, it wasn't on their record. They didn't get a strike against them, so they could try again and try again and try again. So every person that crossed the border, came across sometimes 5-6 times. And in that, the normal human beings count that one person. If you go around a revolving door 6 times, you're still you. There's no magical TARDIS thing that happens that turns you into 6 people. But in maggot math, there is, because they could use that to scare people about the volume of immigrants coming into the country. Clearly, that's what they were trying to scare you. So the problem with saying there's 25 million to 35 million people is that if you can't get them out because they didn't exist in the first place, and you can't show mass deportations to your supporters, which are only possible if the number has grown, And we're not at the basically integral number of undocumented immigrants in the country that we always have, which is about 11 million people who are working under the table at Trump's properties and at the, in the, on farms that everybody knows is responsible for keeping the cost of groceries low. And you can't come in and I'm going to cut prices everywhere and then cut the availability of workers to pick the food that's coming out or process it. The price is going to go up.
That's why Marco Rubio once stated if he's going to rebuild this country like he built Mar-a-Lago, he's going to be using illegal immigrant labor to do so.
Right.
So that was before, obviously, Marco Rubio decided to start kissing the shoe and stuff. But I mean, they notice, they know these things. It's not like, it's not like they don't see it as well. But, what are you going to do?
Right. So we're seeing a bunch of the sort of reactions from the hardline maggots, which I would say, I don't know if they wouldn't call themselves MAGA anymore, but the Nick Fuentes crowd, who clearly has an outsized control over a big chunk of the electorate, who are walking this time. They're not going to vote in the midterms, and if they are, they're going to vote for Democrats because they're feeling vengeful towards Trump for starting the Iran war. And again, I don't have to side with these people or like what they're talking about or their goals or whatever to recognize that it will benefit us in the end if they stand down from the illusion that they had in the first place that Donald Trump was America first or believed the MAGA thing and wasn't just a trademark like Fair and Balanced on Fox. And again, the reason they trademarked Fair and Balanced is because the Supreme Court ruled that a trademark doesn't have to be true. If you say a phrase, we are fair and balanced, and you don't trademark it as a slogan, you have a responsibility to your customer to actually have that. It ends up being part of the label, not part of the ad campaign. But if you trademark it, it's just an ad. You don't have to do it at all. And MAGA is a trademark. Even America First is a trademark. And you and I both know that MAGA, I think Reagan used, and America First was an attempt by, Nazi-aligned members of the American public who were trying to keep us out of World War II. That they were using that as the phrase.
Well, they got to pad their stats. They have to pad their stats because you're 100% right. When you tell people there's 20 to 30 million of this person or that person or this type of that type in the country, and they're roaming amongst you in your neighborhood, they're your neighbor, they're everywhere, and they're just not out there, then you have to find some other way to, at least have that explosive headline of saying 600,000 this or 200,000 that.
Right.
Even if you don't even follow through with it, at least you can feed a little more red meat to the wolves that are the maggots. You know what I mean? But it's like, you're 100% right because this is why they started going into the jails, right? And started kind of looking through the jails to be like, give me everybody you can possibly get that we could utilize and deport. Meanwhile, that's not what they were saying beforehand. They weren't saying they had all of these people already locked up. They were saying they were roaming throughout the country. They were, like I said, they were driving by you in traffic. They were living next to you in your neighborhood. They were, next to you at your son's or daughter's softball game. No, not the people. They weren't telling you to be afraid of the people that were already in prison or already in jail or already heading to their court case. But that's what they had to fall back on because they didn't have the numbers. They don't have the numbers to,
they don't
to show
exist.
They're maggots that that the numbers that they espouse actually exist in this country.
Yeah, and there is a theme through this entire administration, especially the second Trump term. In the beginning they were lying about the numbers. Think of the early part of COVID, where again Donald Trump didn't want a cruise ship to dock in San Francisco because there were 60 people, I think 64 people or something like that, sick with COVID, and he didn't want to double his numbers. His numbers. These are American citizens who need medical care and other people on the boat who aren't sick yet, but if they're trapped there, they would be. But he didn't want to pad his numbers. America first, please. But this is, at some point, do you think it's possible? And we're only in a couple of minutes before we get to the bottom of the hour. Do you think maggots ever wake up to the idea that if he's lying about the Memorandum of Understanding and what's in it, clearly you can read it and hear what he's saying and know that this is not true materially? There's no libs of TikTok excuse. This is Donald Trump's signature on a Farsi document that he never read in English. If he's lying about that, and there aren't 35 million illegals in the country, to deport in the first place, that he was lying about, quote, the open border policy, which was really a COVID aspect of just the volume of people trying to escape areas that had no health care or go to a country that had a vaccine in some cases so they could get it and go back home. The irony, a lot of people crossed the border during COVID to get vaccinated and then left. And they showed up in California and other states like that because they didn't ask you whether you were a citizen when they inoculated you. That was the whole point, because you guaranteed they would return home. If they didn't get inoculated, they'd just stay here because it was safer, because it wasn't spreading as much. We're at the bottom of the hour. Philip Ittner is going to be joining us from Kiev right after this. We're live with Boston Brian. He's going to stay with us for the next hour as well. I think the big part is they just don't have the facts. They don't have the stats, and they don't have the facts. And that's why Trump has to claim fake news with everybody, because they're quoting him. News. Because they're quoting him. We'll be back right after this. Somebody say, how about the Tartan Army? The World Cup has proved to many we ain't Trump. It is our 250th party, our ideal. The Seattle game last night. How does this look to Phil? We'll ask him when he comes on.
No Scotland, no party, baby. No Scotland, no party.
My kid's been watching the Scotland team as well. And there's Phil, so we'll sign him to this too, and then we'll bring him in here because
while you're bringing Phil in for a second, I think maybe, I don't know if it differs from your take on that one, but I do think right now at this point in time, all of the maggots that are left, anybody that is supportive of this regime, absolutely does know the truth. Like, we're at this time where it's, again, I say it on the show, it is the last people surrounding Hitler in the bunker in the final days. They know exactly what's coming. They know that Berlin's not making their way out of the fight. They know they're not just going to all of a sudden, announce the Sixth Army or announce the recreation of all these militaries that have been eliminated, and Hitler's, moving around on different maps and stuff. Like, they know. They understand what's going on, but they just can't see a world without MAGA. They can't see a world without, National Socialism as the Nazis thought, and they can't see a world without Donald Trump. And that's also, on top of the amount of hole digging they've done, how many relationships they've thrown away, how many careers have been thrown away, how many jobs have been thrown away because of their, racist, bigoted beliefs, or them, espousing the same things that, the Republicans or Trump espouses. So, like, they've dug their hole, and I think they're very well aware of how much they're being lied to. I think they're very well aware on the, the decline that we're on because of this administration, but they're too locked in now. They're pot committed, as poker players would say.
They might have I feel like some of them might be having we're all John Thune now. Because I don't know if you saw John Thune when he walked away from that little gathering when Trump was at the Senate, and they all stood and spoke, and they're all lined up.
Jerome Bettis stiff arm from Trump.
Yeah. And that this business. But Thune, when he walks away, went like this. Like, you saw it. Like, he revealed it. He was like, it was just straight up yeesh. All right, let me see if I can get Phil in here with us. There he is. Oh, and I got to put Boston Brian in here. Phil, how are you? Oops, hold on.
Good. Yep.
I want this guy. Where are we?
My apologies, but I might have to just go to the actual iPhone mic and not this mic in just a second. I just looked, and for some reason my phone's already down to 5% somehow.
I'll
let it go down as much as possible without screwing with anything.
It's all right. We'll manage. We'll get you in there.
How's it going, Phil? Good to see you, my brother.
Hey, Brian.
There he
is. There he is.
Yep. And then copy of that guy. This is me. There's this. Guest one. Okay, he's in there. And then there we go. Put this one in here. And we'll get him in the vert. Boink. Yeah, there we go. And then I'm all trunk around. What the hell? What the Sam Hill?
Did you ever think in 2026 that you would be discussing on Hal's show with me about the Ukrainian striking of Volgograd, which is, previously known as Stalingrad? You know what I mean? Like, just the historical references here. I mean, the iconic shot of course, the oil tanker, the oil storage tank, being blown up. It's just, there's so many parallels. It really is. It's nuts to be so passionate about World War II and then seeing basically very similar things take place. Obviously not 1-to-1, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I've been surprised at their increased capacity to hit inside Russia.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing that has surprised me. I would not have put that on my bingo card.
Yeah,
The fact that they would be hitting Volgograd, that they would be striking, St. Petersburg, that they would have developed, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. I thought they would stay domestic. I thought they would more or less stay inside Ukraine and defend Ukrainian territory. In hindsight, I was wrong. I mean, I should have anticipated this. I should have anticipated the fact. I kind of had an inkling that they might do saboteur attacks inside Russia, because Ukrainians can sneak into Russia a lot easier. So,
you're listening to the House Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at housesparks.com.
I don't care for you if it's a putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Right out of the gate, I just want to thank Max Swale for the super chat, and hi from Ireland. If you need any tips for places to visit in Ireland, let me know. Oh, believe me, there will be there will be many a get together.
It's a pity you don't drink, Hal, because one of the best things you can do in Ireland, and I'm not kidding.
I trust you.
The Guinness Brewery is it's like drinking liquid silk. It's the consistency of beer of the Guinness inside the brewery, because every kilometer the saying is every kilometer you go away from the brewery, it loses a little something. I mean, to get it fresh from the tap, it's delicious.
Sure.
Try a box tea.
Mother's milk. What box tea is it? Is that the non-alcoholic version of it?
No. A box tea is a potato crepe. It's an Irish potato crepe. Instead of using,
you can't make me hungry. We've got an hour left of the show. Don't make me save it for the end at least. Now my stomach's going to be growling. The mic will pick it up. It's embarrassing.
Get some water from Crystal.
All right. Welcome. First of all,
I lived in Ireland for the better part of the year.
I know. We're all very impressed down here, I can tell you. Look.
Hey.
Obviously, the big news is that Zelensky has this 40-day plan to end the war. Is that right?
Wow.
And that the goal of this whole thing is to is to basically make Russia really start pushing the thing where Russia really regrets this.
Yeah. Finally. Well, I mean, he may have intimated that it's a plan to end the war. I don't think even he believes that. But what his intention is, and we've heard this from other military leaders here, is that it's going to be nonstop. It's just going to be 40 days of nonstop attacks, somewhere inside Russian-held territory. I suspect he is calculating Crimea in that. But, the point is to bring the war to the Russians. And so 40 days of straight attacks, it'll be unavoidable. And, the whole agreement between Putin and his people is that he would, you forget about our kleptocracy, you forget about our corruption, and we'll let you have stability, and we'll stay out of your way, you stay out of ours. But it's hard to keep that promise when you've got Flamingo cruise missiles flying into, factories. So
right. And that's okay. So that's the other thing. There's been a lot of footage of this in the last little bit of these flamingos striking a factory inside one of the missile launcher factories inside Russia. The launch platform they use to attack Kiev all the time. They are made in this particular factory. I think there were 2 or 3 of them struck it. The flamingos, but they're also doing these massive drone swarms just by volume, you know, dozens, if not hundreds of these things at any given time, just, striking an area. And it seems to be, I don't know. As a news story, it seems to be flying largely under the radar. No pun intended, because that's exactly what the flamingos and the drones are doing. Because the flamingo flies so low that the Russian air defenses seem to be completely useless against it. So, what's the current feeling about that in country right now?
Hitting inside of Russia, no problem. I think the vast majority of Ukrainians are fully supportive of that. You're right. The flamingo flies in at a very low altitude, very steady. But regardless, what that means is that Putin now has to move air defenses away from the frontline areas and pull them back to, inside Russia, which means he's got to reposture his defenses. And so for Ukrainian troops on the front line, and there's a lot of talk that it's not the 40 days of strikes are actually going to be in conjunction with some sort of offensive ground operation.
Right.
We'll wait and see. That could just be speculation. So there's no problem in Ukraine generally with the idea of striking into Russia. Obviously, after years of being hit by Russia inside Ukraine, it's kind of, a taste of their own medicine is generally the attitude here. Crimea is a little different because, it was part of Ukraine. It's far more complicated than pretty much any factor in the war because there is a large population of Russians there. There's the mix with the Crimean Tatars, who are the indigenous people and who have been forced to flee or go underground. So that's an added extra element. And then there's the element of, look, if you live in Crimea and you're being starved because Ukraine is cutting off the food supply lines, not just, weapons, but food, water, electricity are going to be affected by this. There is a certain percentage, it's not a large percentage of Ukrainian criticism of we can't do this to our own people, because if we ever actually want to have Crimea back as part of Ukraine, we cannot torture these people because they will not welcome us back. And so you have all of these elements. You have the Russian residents who have been there for generations, either because of the naval sea base there, or there was a big push in the late stage Soviet Union and in early Russian Federation to kind of make this Crimea kind of an affordable vacation home for what little middle class exists in Russia.
Right.
So there are a lot of Russians that legitimately lay claim to homes in Crimea. So what do you do with those people? Does Ukraine, who has held the high ground throughout much of this war, want to turn around and now become kind of the, I don't want to say oppressor, but the invader and cutting off food and gas and electricity? And not only is that going to affect perception globally, maybe. I don't know if the Europeans are some Europeans are probably going to balk at that, especially. But and the final point is, are they gonna meet Ukrainian forces if Russia withdraws? Are they going to meet Ukrainians coming in with flowers and kisses?
Right.
They've been starving for 5, 6, 10, 12 months, whatever. It's complicated. Crimea is the most complicated part of this entire war.
Right.
But as far as what Ukraine has been doing internally within Russia, the attitude here is, the Russians deserve everything they get.
Yeah. Go ahead, Phil. I could tell Brian wanted to say something. Go ahead.
I was just curious, do you think that pertains to just overall strikes into Crimea, or just the general, like overall, what we see as the goal of cutting off Crimea from resupply and basically all the essentials that they would need to continue life? I'm just curious if it's like, because obviously, like Sevastopol must be seen as a justifiable military target to strike, and other military bases throughout Crimea, or is it just kind of the general plight of the people that they know will come if this this continues?
Yeah, I think that the Ukrainians were very precise in what they're hitting, and they have been for the most part. I mean, they hit with a Storm Shadow, a British cruise missile, British French cruise missile, the Black Sea Fleet headquarters, and that's right in the middle of town. But it was a precision strike, and so I think they probably get away with things like that. There's talk of them hitting desalination centers. One of Crimea's biggest difficulties is that they don't have any fresh water. Ironically, being surrounded by water, but it's a sea, it's salt water. So you have to have desalination, and there's been talk of maybe choking off Crimea by hitting the water treatment plants. And I don't know. I got to say, I don't know how that would go down. The petrol lines, that's got to be ticking off some people. If it comes to food shortages, I think that'll anger a lot of people. But as long as they state a military strike, whether that's the naval base or ships or infrastructure, air defense, stuff like that,
it's understandable. Right. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Philip Ittner has a show called On the Edge. Sunday's new episodes at his YouTube channel, Philip Ittner on YouTube. We'll be back right after this.
Think Theory Radio.
Just looking at the chat.
Sure.
Surprises me a little bit, honestly, Phil, some of what you were saying there. Not, because I just feel like it would be obvious as to why these things were going on. Obviously, you'd have that, like, that hesitancy of doing it to your own people, but it's like I don't know. Like I said, I'm not there, so I can't speak on that. But it surprises me a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, look, your kid goes hungry. You don't get any water for days on end. That's going to piss people off no matter what. So, and again, Crimea is a very complex mix of peoples. There are Russians, there are Ukrainians, there are Tatars, there are Jews. It's a multi-ethnic place. So not everybody has the same allegiance. And the Tatar relationship with Kiev has been complicated, to say the least. I mean, they took to the streets during Poroshenko's administration to protest for increased power for their own autonomous parliament. And that got a little bit violent, not too bad. In the end, the Tatars were given that autonomy, so they kind of and the Tatars, I think, hate Russians more than they hate Ukrainians. The Russians the Russians conducted an entire genocide. In 1943, they packed them all overnight. They packed up, hundreds of thousands.
Kind of related to like the French, you know what I mean? Like the French knew they were being oppressed and occupied by the Germans, but they were kind of, there's that famous scene in a lot of, or famous scenes, I should say, in a lot of the old World War II films where the French are welcoming the bombs on Normandy and the landings at Normandy, knowing that, a lot of stuff is going to be destroyed. A lot of
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Yeah, there's...
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
We continued a bit of the discussion, infotainment wars on YouTube, and of course, twitch.tv/Hal Sparks, and of course on the Facebook page, wherever you like, I will bring the show to you. But we discussed a little bit during the break, this kind of, how are the Crimeans going to feel about the attacks the Ukrainians are doing on Russian support structure in the area and that kind of stuff, which is sort of an understood in war, but if you're, Phil made the point that if your kid's going hungry, you kind of don't care. And so it's a difficult thing to run. In the meantime, I think the equivalent, in some ways on a macroscopic level is this week, a cartoonist that had drawn some relatively unflattering cartoons of Vladimir Putin was shot to death in Poland by two Belarusians.
Yeah.
In what is effectively a political assassination in that country. A couple of them have been detained. The idea, though, that these guys got a bug in their bonnet about defending Putin versus a paid hit effectively is absurd. And the rest of Europe is dealing with the fact that this will be an ongoing problem in many ways, the same way that we're concerned about the deal around Iran, that if we somehow collapse the regime in Iran or something like that, there's still going to be this like vengeance tour and blowback that happens from part of these things. The only difference with the Russians is it's active, that they are eliminating people on foreign soil in countries that are not party to the war. With relative impunity. Putin's done this before. He's killed people in Berlin. He's attempted to kill people in London and was successful in a couple of cases, right? And there is no indication that they ever expect to stop. That this is the Russian way, and that one of the ways they're going to extend that power structure is just to dust people off. If as a display of power, ironically, a vulgar display of power, as it were, because it's not going to make the war any better. It's not winning any hearts and minds. It's not convincing anybody, and it's not strategically helping. In this,
difficult to talk after a little Novichok.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, it's Putin and the Siloviki trying to scare everybody to step in line.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's is more for domestic consumption within. Don't dare think about stepping out of line, sort of thing. The added bonus of ticking off the Europeans, that's just that's just icing on the cake.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. It's not going to have, and then also there's and this is just me postulating. I don't know this for sure, but there's also, I suspect, the message being sent to the rich and the powerful in Russia, who I am sure are padding their beds with bullion and whatever to make good their escape. For when the thing falls apart, they want to have as much money that they can smuggle out to the West as possible when they make their escape.
That's
and
right.
So by sending the message of "Don't you dare leave the motherland. If you do, we will hunt you down and kill you." So there's kind of a preemptive strike on capital flight.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I guess part of the attempt would be to scare people into just never leaving. Is that what you mean? Like that they're just
we can get you anywhere you go.
Right, and they just find ways of displaying that it's not even like this guy was a big enough target or worthwhile, but just the real target was the motivation of the oligarchs that might decide to pack their stuff and move to Kazakhstan for a little while, where it's relatively safe, or bust off across the border into Georgia. Again, it's becoming increasingly hard for those people to do that as crypto has started to collapse. And that was their way of wedging themselves out. That was their way of moving their money around, was specifically crypto. And Trump knows this, and so do, Don Jr. and Eric and all these guys. This is basically a way of these guys finding people a way to evacuate their money out of Russia and China, because they can't do it through legit means, through SWIFT or through their own, in the case of China, removing their stuff. I guess the question we have to look at is how much impact do you think this 40-day plan of Zelensky's will have on the morale of the Russian people, if it will, if Russia will be able to play that into fortifying their stealing their spine about this, or it'll be another example of how this tiny little country is kicking their butt.
Well, I mean, it's like I've often said about Russian history is that the Russian people have this propensity for suffering, but there's a breaking point, and it's usually quite sudden. So they suffer, they can't suffer anymore. There's upheaval. Then a new ruling class comes in, and they suffer until they can't suffer anymore, and then another ruling class is brought in. So I don't know. I from what I can tell, the Russian people are getting real tired of this, and they recognize it's an existential threat for their sense of self as empire, but at the same time, this is now 5 years into this thing, and they're not making any real progress, and they can dress it up as much as they like, but I think the Russian people are aware that this is not going the way Putin wanted it to. So, we'll see. I don't know. Is 40 days going to be enough? I mean, they're looking at, they're doing all sorts of things. We want to be producing 7 million drones a year. We want to be, we kill, we cause 1,000 Russian casualties a day. We want to get that up to 13 or 1,500 a day. So, they're taking some losses around the fortress cities, which gives me pause for concern. But more or less, it looks like the Ukrainians have the momentum right now. Even that thing recently, what was it, 2 days ago in the Oval with Mark Rutte, with him sitting there going, saying, the Ukrainians seem to be doing really well. And who would have thought he would say that 6 months ago?
Right. In front of Trump.
Turned a corner.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think he was sincere. But it is interesting to see the president of the United States going from you don't have the cards to actually it seems they're doing pretty good. Even if he's disingenuous about it, he's still saying it in the Oval.
Honest to God, I just think he's non-confrontational and weak at his core. And if somebody more, taller, more handsome, and who speaks faster than he does, and obviously who has an accent, which means they speak one more language than he does, starts saying stuff with some fortitude while still kissing his butt, he has to agree with it. I mean, I think Rutte has learned the Macron handshake, and they're all picked up on it. They're all they. Go ahead, Brian. Yeah.
I was just and it's become so obvious too. You know what I mean? I feel like we've really hit another turning point in this war. And I know every war has multiple turning points that you can look back on. But I think right now, despite what's going on and around Konstantinivka and the obvious threats posed to that, I do think there are some good things that the Ukrainians have going for them, even if that situation does collapse even further. They still have other settlements and cities to rely upon that they could move back to and make the Russians just basically start this whole thing over again. But I think we've really hit a change of pace in this war, especially pertaining to the way that the Russians feel this war. I think the strikes on St. Pete, I think the strikes on the Moscow oil refinery, I think the fuel shortages and the gas shortages, not just in Donbass, not just in Luhansk and Donetsk, not just in Crimea, but in multiple regions of Russia, some even some 5,000 kilometers away from the front line, is really starting to have an impact. I think the Russians have throughout this war have been frustrated. I think they've known that it was a disaster, but they were kind of okay as long as it wasn't being brought to their front door, as long as their economy was still hanging on by whatever thread that it's hanging on by, as long as they could still get fake Coke and fake McDonald's. I think they're kind of willing to put up with the pain and suffering that Phil real rightly brings up that they're willing to put up with. But when the bombs start dropping on their doorstep, when they're starting to run out of gas and fuel lines in places that are pretty prominent places inside of Russia, most prominently the Moscow region, supposed to be the most heavily defended region in all of Russia. And like Phil rightly brought up earlier, they're now having to take air defenses away from other portions of very important places to bring it into Moscow to more heavily defend, so that they don't have the population seeing the effects and feeling the effects of these Ukrainian strikes, which are becoming not only more frequent, more effective, and just more numerous, right? Not only is it how many drones they're able to put up, but how effective those drones and missiles are actually becoming right now. So I think we've really turned the corner, another corner in this war as far as that is concerned.
I also think that there's a standard by which the size of the explosions and the visibility of them is unmistakable. Where before there might have been smaller attacks, or maybe Russia was able to hide some of these. These are visible for miles and miles. They're enormous explosions. The flamingo strikes are the kind that shake a population, and that that is a difference as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all of those things are true. I think the fact that Ukraine is nowhere near on the verge of collapse, which is kind of the narrative they were trying to sell for so long, and it's obvious that that's not the case. Brian's right. Even if they do take Konstantinovka, which would be bad, they can't leave the other fortress cities behind them. So they're going to have to start edging up into Sloviansk and into Kramatorsk. And, these cities are, they call them the fortress cities for a reason. They'll lose before they take Kramatorsk, in particular Kramatorsk. The other city, Sloviansk, is important because it's a transportation hub, but you can still support Kramatorsk by other means. And Kramatorsk is the big one. There's an old tractor factory there that's enormous, that during the Second World War they converted into making tanks. There are coal foundries, there are smelting plants, there are all sorts of heavy industrial sites in Kramatorsk that they will make the Russians pay in the hundreds of thousands to take Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, and then Kramatorsk.
And the question is, are they willing?
A long way from over,
right? Well, and the Russians have shown themselves, at least the leadership has shown themselves willing to have other people pay that price for them. They lose. What is it? We got to take a break, but the Russians are losing every 6 weeks what America lost in Vietnam in the entirety of the war. That's insane. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Tom Hartman.
Can you check for me so I can hear you?
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Now I can hear you.
Yep. Okay, cool. Yeah, there was a little bit of a stagger in there. One of those internet hits, gremlin attack. It's okay.
But even after Konstantinivka, man, I'm like, I know it goes up north into Kramatorsk and stuff, but even the smaller settlements over it after Konstantinivka give the Ukrainians the ability to kind of, get back, get their wits about them, set up, even smaller or short-time defenses that make it even more difficult than it would be even, if they didn't. You know what I'm saying? So it's like even, Drushivka going back into those, and then you start getting into some more open territory there. So
well, you can't leave Kharkiv in your rear either. So
right.
They can't just break through the fortress cities and then go straight for Kiev, because there's too much defensive capability in Kharkiv as well. I mean, they could try and encircle it and besiege it, but then that's using a lot of manpower to do that too. So all the doom and gloom of the Vatniks and the pro-Moscow types who are saying, oh, as soon as Konstantinivka is over, it's all going to be a domino effect, and they'll be in Kiev within 3 weeks.
WCPT 820,
right,
where facts matter.
This is Damian Perdue of Think Theory Radio, Saturdays at 6 p.m. You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
There are, beyond, again, the flamingo attacks, which are, I think, the big turning moment, if anything, how far they're going into the country, the fact that they're having multiple missile attacks on these refineries and factories. The drone swarm aspect of it is the game changer aspect of this. And the Russians are nowhere near, ironically enough, meeting this, if a smaller country with the budget and the manpower issues that Ukraine has against a much larger country and the money that they have is able to throw that many, to produce millions of drones every year. The idea that the Russians couldn't seems absurd. So do you think it's the question of like the Russians just think it's beneath them? Is there an ego aspect to this?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that come into play here. One of them, and I think it's a huge factor, is that Russia is centralized in what it does militarily. And so what they have been doing is making tons and tons of Shaheeds, FPV drones for the front line, and then Shaheed drones, which are not very sophisticated drones, but they have gotten to a place where they can build them to scale. So the Russians can churn out Shaheeds, but Shaheeds only do one thing, and that's long-range basically terror attacks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they've been using them for. Whereas the Ukrainians, because they're much more diversified, and you have lots of different companies with different contracts with the military, that they've got drones that are FPV for the front line. They've got drones that carry 60 millimeter mortar shells for heavier, more entrenched emplacements, or even sometimes armor.
Mm-hmm.
They've got these medium range things to hit supply, just long enough to hit behind the lines and disrupt Russian supply routes. And then of course they've got the long range. They've got their own long range capacity now, whether it's drones and then of course you see the inventiveness of spiderweb.
Yeah.
The Ukrainians have a lot of tools in their toolbox. They may not be able to match Russia in sheer capacity of what they can produce, but the Russians they're a one-trick pony, more or less a one-trick pony. And I think that that's having an effect on the war front as well, because the Ukrainians, and they have a system called Delta. The Ukrainians have a system for control of their drones called Delta, and it's a glorified Zoom call. Really, it's a highly encrypted Zoom call that your access codes change every 24 hours and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's basically a Zoom call, and you'll have a commander, a drone battalion commander, go out, look at the Zoom call, look at the targets, go, okay, that is a bunker in a trench line that controls that sector of the line. We need an FPV to go in there. Okay, there's an APC over there, or there's an officer center over there. We got to send something that can drop a mortar round. We need to send in a Vampire, or a larger heavy lift drone. Or we know that they're getting we know they're having an award ceremony in some city, 60 kilometers behind the front line. Well, with our new medium range drones, we can hit that. So because they have a whole bunch of different things that they can do, it's what the U.S. military calls a force multiplier. The fact that the sum of the parts is greater than the parts themselves. And that's where the Ukrainians, I think, are fighting and winning the drone war over the Russians, because the Russians, every nail is a hammer, and just more Shaheeds, more Shaheeds, more Shaheeds, and more front, FPV for frontline activity.
So
that's it.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions for you that are in the chat, and I want to get to. Colonel Klink says, Lukashenko seems to be between a rock and a hard place. What does Philip think about Belarus? And that kind of ties to Edward Brayman's question, which is, can you ask Philip about Zelensky to tell Mr. Potato Head in Belarus to stop assisting Russia, or else in 1 week, Ukraine starts hitting them? I don't feel like they would pull Belarus into this, but I think
that's an empty threat.
But the Europeans might have leverage in the future.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But also, Lukashenko is caught between a rock and a hard place. But he's already said, he's made the announcement he will not allow Russian troops to pass through Belarus on their way to attack Ukraine. Now, whether or not he holds true to that or not, I don't know. He's also said he can. Well, he's also said he's shutting off the relays that the Russians use for guidance. So, that is something tangible that we can check. And if he maintains, if he keeps that system down, and the Russians aren't able to use Belarus airspace to send in, cruise missiles or drones or whatever they want to send, well, then we know that Lukashenko is actually doing this. Lukashenko has a lot of issues that he has to deal with. His primary patron has been Putin. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, especially because if it did, then the Kremlin might very well replace him.
Right.
Normally by, killing him. But he's got a population that hates him. He's been in power for, going on 30 years now, 35 years now. I mean, his population hates him. So he can't exert any of his own forces to
there's certainly a limit just as for his own physical safety and whatever power he does have. And this is the same situation we ran in with like Yanukovych or whoever. If you're a puppet for Russia, you know your role. At a certain point, whatever you want to do or say is going to be you're going to be a paper tiger at some point. I think simply because Putin's dangerous.
Did you see that video about that coup? No, it was making its round.
I saw the soldier. Yeah, I saw the soldier with all of his medals threatening that if.
What do you make of that?
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I don't know. It's
wait. Catch everybody up for what this is. So, explain it. This guy wasn't he's like sort of a citizen army kind of a dude. He wasn't. I mean, he definitely served in the Russian military at some point or whatever. But he was one of these like kind of. I don't know if he was running one of the little green men groups or one of these like tacitly almost attached to the real Russian military. That guy, yeah. That
with all his medals.
Yeah. That he was actually like it's like a reservist, saying I'm going to take a bunch of my fellow reservists are going to start taking up arms and I want to meet with Vladimir Putin and I want to do it on television and he's got to explain to everybody what he's trying to accomplish in this war or all my guys are going to start rising up and they're going to take up arms against the Kremlin. And they're all over the place. The assumption is that all the reservists everywhere that I have aligned to these guys, basically creating using paranoia as a weapon.
He's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, or
right.
both.
There's a thin line.
Well, and these things do have a chance of, a match lighting a fire. If you look back in Russian history, it's the Decembrists. Who came back from the Napoleonic Wars and saw how Europeans were living, and so they took to the streets of St. Petersburg and they were slaughtered, and that suppressed violent opposition to the Tsar for a good half a century. Then you have the anarchist movement, and then you have, of course, the Russo-Japanese War and the First World War, which then, of course, led to a mass revolution of armed forces. So it does have the potential for doing that. But
that's why they put it down so heavily. That's why you shoot cartoonists that make joke drawings of you is because if anybody gets the idea that there's blood in the water, you're in big trouble, especially if your entire power structure is based on everybody's afraid of me. Once people stop being afraid, you stop being in charge. And that's the problem I think Trump doesn't understand about the respect versus fear part. That fear has a limit, not only in how you can exercise it, whether it's true or not, but also in at some point, some folks get so up against the wall, like the people in Crimea you're talking about who might be sympathetic to what's going on. But if their kids are starving or they see somebody that they love, killed or harmed by this, at a certain point, the fear that you would use to control them goes out the window because they got nothing left to lose. And Putin's in the business right now of creating people with nothing left to lose. Both on the Ukrainian side, I think he's effectively done that with the country. Like, what's their choice? Get steamrolled? That it wasn't like I'm only doing this little bit. Like he clearly is talking about taking the whole country. The Europeans, the same thing with Putin. Like he's He's not talking about, well, we just want Ukraine just as a buffer and a safety zone. They're talking Ruska Mir all through the, like, we've seen Solovyev and Simonyan and all that crowd talking about how, like, Berlin's next and we're going to take the Slavic countries. And they're not kidding. They're not just bluffing. There's a tendency, I think, on the American side to think that bravado and being braggadocious is because with Trump, it's a lot of noise and it fails a lot. But when it comes from someone like Putin or Putin, controlled media, when they act on it is anybody's question. But the idea that they could or would is not a question. They don't care.
Well, and creating a capable military has always been a double-edged sword for the Russian ruling elite. I mean, look at what Brian, you're a student of World War II. I mean, look what they did to Zhukov. I mean, the general in charge of all Soviet armies who wins the war for Stalin. He is the guy that drives to Berlin. He's the one that wins the war. And what's his reward? He gets I think his son gets thrown in a mental institution, so they can hold him hostage. And he himself gets exiled out to Irkutsk, out in Siberia. You can't have a strong military leader. You look at Alexander Lebed, who won the Second Chechen War in the 90s for Yeltsin and Putin. And he goes down in a very, very suspicious helicopter crash. The problem for the Tsar,
kind of like a couple of Trump's partners in Atlantic City.
Well,
like Erwin Rommel as well. I mean, if you want to go to the other side of things, too, look at what Rommel was responsible for in North Africa. Look what they did to him.
Yeah, you can't let these dictators, Hitler included, but the Russians have a long-standing history of this. Of like, if you let a hero become too politically powerful, you gotta get rid of him, and that doesn't mean exactly killing him, because you couldn't kill Zhukov. You had to exile him because he was too big to kill, and so they had to exile him.
I mean, he literally changed the defense of Stalingrad to further the point, Phil. I mean, to how how much you always tell people, like, World War II in Russia is a religion. It's a religion. It's not just this. It's not just this piece of history. It's something that they, it's very ingrained in their blood. So to have somebody, especially the Battle of Stalingrad, one of the biggest, deadliest ones in history, right? And the guy that led the defense of came and changed it up, so to speak. To have him be exiled, I think, just kind of furthers the point that you're making. It's like, it doesn't really matter, what you did or who you are. If they don't see you kind of carrying the torch for the regime anymore, to the point where you're
gotta go.
Then you're on the outs.
Or even if you don't mean to, if you just get support within the populace, it may not even be your own fault. It might just be you're a threat, and so you got to go.
Yep, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the HouseSparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, down with 100% more. Boston, Brian, and then of course both of them have shows on Sunday, but they don't compete, and you could have a nice viewing party. I'm just saying, watching both of them. We'll be back right after this.
What
they're pointing out the head of the Wagner group, right? He got his plane shot down. Yeah, Prigozhin.
No, I don't know about that. I don't want to put on my tinfoil hat, but
you think he escaped? Got a new nose? I think so too. Yeah. I think that was an empty plane.
If not, then he possibly one of the most idiotic individuals ever to, I mean, of course he knew, and he goes way back with Putin. I mean, so again, I don't want to put on my tinfoil hat, but I bet
why
he's
not
off somewhere.
What island was Napoleon exiled to? I always forget the name of it.
It's Elba.
Yeah, I feel like that's where he belongs.
He's there with Epstein. He's there with Jeffrey Epstein. They're both trading massages for smokes.
Insane.
Oh, my Atlanta.
All right, we're coming back with the okay. How much does Belarus trade with the EU? That's a good question. I don't know that they do a ton. Yeah,
no, very little.
Not a lot.
They don't really produce a lot. They're not. I mean, it's a tiny little country, and
Says
don't
in
think their
2025, the EU
exports.
was Belarus's third biggest trade partner, representing 10.6 of the country's overall trade in goods, a drop from 14% in 2021.
You're listening to WCPT 820
That's for
because
Belarus to
facts
the EU.
matter.
I wonder what the EU to the Belarus is.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Because isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
I think the happy ending was, I had a great show last night at Flappers for our Patreons. For some reason, there was an issue with the stream, but it is up and the link is there for if you're a member on the YouTube channel. If you look at my posts, you can find a link to watch the show last night. And then, of course, the Patreon, we have a new updated link in there. Reach out to Andrea and she will make sure you have it if you don't have it from there. But I do think that this shift in the war in terms of Ukraine is certainly good news, because I think anything that might bring this to a close by a show of strength from Ukraine, as opposed to what Trump would rather, which is, of course, that they, his illusion about them being weaker, and that they just have to give in because Russia is so big and strong. And then, I don't think there's anything to be happy about in the Memorandum of Understanding garbage that's going on between the United States and Iran. Again, we all have I think I have a closer personal relationship with the people of Iran than I've ever had, and that we're both run by psychotic maniacs. Bless you. And
thank you.
Phil, yeah. And it's a bit sad that our leadership is equally deluded, self-involved, and violent. And it really only affects the people of these countries. And the same thing, I think, applies, this farce around the Gaza peace deal that Trump allegedly made, and everybody just got all quiet about it. And the same stuff is going on there today that was going on before. And then now we're in the same situation in Lebanon. We got, Israeli tanks moving into southern Lebanon. These agreements, are not worth the toilet paper they're printed on. And is there a breaking, I guess the question for both of you, and on a historical level, and of course, based on the relationship of the countries involved, is there a point where people just start recognizing that the Ukraine being unique in this circumstance, but like with Russia, Iran, and the United States leadership, not the people themselves, but the leadership, is there ever a point where the public just starts overwhelmingly going against it, whether they feel safe to do so or not? There's a little bit of it in the United States where people are afraid of the administration and how it will lash out. There certainly is inside Russia, and there certainly is inside Iran. But is there a point where an Iranian revolution stands up, or a Russian revolution, even with this blood in the water moment with that guy posting things, or the mill bloggers say turning tail or questioning the veracity of their own claims?
Well, I think there's a ticking clock on all of them, except for the Iranians.
Mm-hmm.
Netanyahu at some point is going to have to face his criminal charges.
Mm-hmm.
They've got their elections coming. There's a parliamentary election in the Knesset, I think. Is it September? I don't hold me to it. Obviously we have the midterms, and Putin is, that clock has been ticking ever since 2023, when he didn't take Odessa and he didn't take Kiev. Once that was done, and it was obvious that this was just going to be a slog, and it was just a matter of how many more Ukrainians and Russian soldiers have to die before Putin is deposed. And that clock is still ticking, and he knows it, and that's why everybody gets a little bit, scared because of like, oh, what about an escalation? Because Putin knows that if he loses this war, he's going to get killed. So for all three of them, the only ones that come out of this, it seems, are the Iranians, with kind of a secure leadership. I think all three of those guys, Putin, Netanyahu, and Trump, are all.
Well, the ironic part,
looking at the sun starting to set.
Yeah, well, that's because I guess the oldest leader in this equation, which was the leader of Iran, is already dead, and the son that followed him may or may not be influential at he could be like a figurehead at this point, or even if they're pretending to reference what he's doing. But the IRGC is clearly running the place. The Vahidi or whatever, the guy who's running the IRGC, is really the one making the real decision. So again, does Trump even know who he's negotiating with? Does Vance, does Witkoff and Kushner, do they think, even if they came to a better thing than the stupid MOU, which is, again, Trump is ignoring everything that's in it. So why in the world would they pay attention to it ultimately, except to use it as a cudgel in the press with the rest of the world? Like, hey, we signed this. We agreed to it. We got more of what we want. We're playing by our rules that are set in here. Just because Trump's too stupid to read the damn thing that's not our fault. We're allowed to bomb boats if we want to because we control the strait. It says so in the Memorandum of Understanding for at least the next 60 days. And then if he extends same thing.
They're batting around with him like a cat playing with a mouse. They're just whacking them around because they're putting things in the MOU that they know will never get accepted. I mean,
right?
Long term, all troops out of Lebanon,
but to get the strait open, Trump has signed off on these things at least temporarily, and 60 days with an extension is a long time in Trump tacoing out as he has done repeatedly. And it's. I don't think people recognize, like, beyond the petroleum products that go through there, the fertilizer that's been a major impact on, like, the cost of fertilizer in the United States went up so much so that somewhere in the order of 60% of our farmers were either late with their purchases or didn't have the money to do it or had to borrow to do it or just frankly never made the purchase in the first place, which is going to affect food costs in the United States in the fall and in the spring of next year, because that's how these things work. And we've got a bunch of leaders, including Vladimir Putin, I think, who can't see past the end of their nose. And
I think the Iranians are benefiting from the obviousness of the situation, and I think in the same reality, the same way that the Russians are, it's degrading their abilities to do anything. It's degrading the abilities of the citizenry to trust their government in Russia, is how obvious everything is. I mean, when you have the land bridges being bombed the way that they're being bombed, the supply trucks hit the way that they're being hit, the Kerch Bridge clearly becoming more and more of a focus, even if it's just the general surrounding area at this point. Clearly, some softening up is happening. Whether you're looking at the ferries inside of the Sea of Azov that were struck and had to be temporarily suspended, meanwhile they're taking across some of the more heavy equipment and stuff. The lack of Russian naval presence in the Black Sea to begin with, the strikes inside of not only occupied Crimea, not only occupied Crimea, but occupied Luhansk and Donetsk, and also into Russia, Moscow, St. Pete, Rostov. I mean, looking at putting these all together, I mean, it paints a clear picture and not a rosy one for Vladimir Putin. The same way, if you look at the MOU and the situation there, it doesn't paint a
they're all making the same mistakes.
Right.
And add to the situation domestically in Russia, in that they're trying to tamp down on communications. So Russians who are, especially young Russians, who have become very accustomed to mobile data, they're very restrictive on using your phone for internet. You can still, if you have a landline, if you have a fiber optic at home, you can connect to the internet, but you can't. And they had become very accustomed to being able to pay for your taxi, to order an Uber, to order food, to order, to use it to get on the metro. They'd become very integrated to that, and so to control communications and obstruct any kind of organization, they've cut off mobile data, and that is another indication that they're desperate. And I think the Russian people recognize it, especially the young people.
That's right. Before we get to the end of the show, I want to remind everybody that Boston Brian has shows on Sunday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, Tuesday, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, Wednesday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, Thursday, 2 o'clock, and Friday, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, just so you get those things. Philip Bittner has a show on Sunday, new episode tomorrow, I'm hoping, for On the Edge.
With a mental health expert.
All right. I'm try not to take that personally. I also, I'll watch. All right. Is this an intervention? All right. A couple of people said, by the way, Thomas Hamill, golfer, Ukraine, wrote, Bowie says hi, bark to Uncle Brian, which is lovely. And wanted to put that in there. Josh, yes, that was a Pantera reference I made earlier. And then, of course, Johnny Cat says reactions from fear are hard to anticipate because sometimes a dog bites out of fear. And that's, a lot of the issues that I think both Putin and the Iranian leadership and Netanyahu and Trump are all staring down the barrel of, especially as they lose their grasp on not just the control of their own countries and the narrative, but their own mental health. The question is, will Putin be running the country, or will Putin's, one of his lookalikes take over and, shut down the war, apologize, and, after Putin kicks off and become the beloved Putin that nobody realizes is actually their version of Dave. Who can say? Boston Brian, thank you for coming in and filling in for Johnny Million while he's away at an Orioles game. Greatly appreciate it. Philip Bittner, of course, host of On the Edge, and our great friend. Please stay safe, sir. We will in Chicago. Thank you guys so much. In 2 weeks, I'm going to be in Chicago for the Hody Bash, and so I will be doing the show live from the studio. But we will see you next week. I am going to be live on the 4th of July with my own little 250 message, and we will see you guys then. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else.
Thanks, Chicago. See y'all.
When I'm in the car, I'm.
Thank you, Chicago.
Thanks, Chicago. Appreciate you. Can I give one shameless, not even a shameless plug because it has really nothing to do with me, but we're about 76% of the way through our Help 99 NAFO 69 Sniffer Brigade campaign. It's our second campaign to help raise €20,500 to send a NAFO 3.0 pickup truck to the 3rd Operational Battalion Artillery Platoon. And like I said, we've raised €15,755 in just over 2 weeks, which is, I think, pretty substantial for a channel with less than 25,000 subscribers. So
amazing.
Again, anybody that can get in a buck, a fiver, a tenner, anything like that, and if you can't, if you could just share it out, I'll be sure to see if I can throw the link in the chat. But if you go to help99.co, it is the Boston Brian Summer of Drones campaign, and you'll be really helping us out if you could get that to the finish line. So thank you, Hal.
Yeah, absolutely. Help99.co. And we'll go to the where is it?
Yeah, if you bring up all campaigns, you go to all campaigns.
Going to all campaigns.
Yep. And then you scroll down and you should see probably about 5 or 6 down will be Boston Brian Summer of Drones. And then you click on that and it should take you right into the exact campaign. Tells you all the information that you need to know, where the money's going, how much has been raised. There's a video from the 3rd Operational Battalion there to say, thank you, and this is what we're looking for. And so you get to, see the actual people. And like I said, hopefully, I'll be privileged, honor and privilege of handing the vehicle over in person at some point would be fantastic.
Right.
So
hold on real quick. I'm just going to put this up on screen. Take me a second, whatever. This is the page itself. At that actual site. Is that right?
That's the first one that I did. That's the first one. So the second one, see how it says campaign is over on that one? So the second one, you should just be able to type in Help 99 Boston Brian Summer of Drones and it should pick it up. But like I said, it's
there it is.
99.co and it should be right at one of the beginnings of the it's one of the newer campaigns, so it shouldn't be too far down the list.
I changed it up where I'm clicking on Boston and it's showing there, but it's not hold on. We'll have to scroll this up. See this. I don't know why it doesn't like switching pages, but we'll get there. Hold on. So go back to here, and then maybe I just have to. Maybe I just have to go to it again. Hold on. I'll jump back to us, and then I'll jump back to here, and hopefully it'll wake itself up. I got it. I got you. Don't worry. There it is. Active campaign. There it is. Help99.co, and then just if you guys go to the site, help99.co, you could do a search in their in the first page up here, and it will. If you go over here, it just click on this double lines on the side. You can search right here, and if you put in Boston Brian, it will take you right to it. So
I appreciate you, Hal. Thank you so much, man.
absolutely. So that's doing it like that, and there you go. And you'll see the one on the right is the Summer of Drones. Click on that. It says active campaign right up here. You can help out. That's great. And apparently you get a patch. Look at that. If you look at that.
Best patches in the game. Best patches in the game, I think.
That's right.
I mean, I'm biased, but what are you gonna do?
That's right. And it's got the NAFO middle finger from the Ukraine. That's old school back in the day moment. So that's terrific. All right.
And thank you, brother. And Phil, I got to get you back on the show too, my man. I got to get in
Sure.
touch with you so we can set something
any
up.
day, any days except for well, no, 2. So Monday we can. I'm sorry, Sunday we conflict. But another day, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got you, brother.
We'll make it happen.
Thank you, Hal.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Best
All
luck
right.
and everything.
All right. I'll let you guys
right.
go. Cheers.
See you.
Much love. All right. Off they go. Thank you guys. And chat room. Thank you so much. Not too much. Not too many technical issues. Couple of worrisome, glitchy moments, but too much stress. So I want to thank everybody with the super chats. Again, Val Vickery, welcome back. Glad to have you. And again, I truly am jealous of the trip you got to take. That's very cool. And I'm gonna try and put that's not gonna read at all. That's hilarious. Shrink this down and drag this over here. There you go. It's kind of, I don't know why this is so odd. Come here, you. Take this and shrink it down and drag it over and put it over here, and then this guy right there. Look at that. There's Boston Brian's schedule. There you go. And then I don't know what the hell is happening with this guy. There you go. I'm going to put it over here, over across my head, because that's the only way to fix it. It's so aggravating. All right, there you go. Shrink it over there, and then there it is. It's extra large, and then I shrink it down. That's going to be a little hard to read, but I'm putting it over here anyways, and then I'll blow it up a little bit. Now it's on the vertical side as well, and you guys can see that. And scene. All right, that was good. That's hilarious. Okay, excellent. And I will see you guys Monday. I gotta pack up and drive back to LA, or back to Vegas from LA. So appreciate you guys, and thanks to everybody who showed up for the Flapper show. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, because last night the Midler, who is really good guy, he's working on stuff, so he didn't want to stream his stuff, so we didn't start the stream until I went on stage. So there was a little bit of a stagger, so I had to start it and then stop it and then start it again. And so that's why it's, just like took out that person. Oh, awesome. And on Monday morning, special treat. JoJo from Jers is going to be a guest on the show. That's exciting. That's super fun. So I think that's fun. And so hopefully you'll be able to join me for House Sparks Mornings, Mega Worldwide, 9 a.m. Pacific time. And then is just JoJo for the first hour, I guess. Okay, excellent. And I will see you guys much later. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you to all our Patreon folks. The little scroll seems to help, but at the very least, if you don't mind, subscribe. And I also want to thank the maggots. We had a couple. We've only got 2. I can see 2 thumbs down. I was very disappointed in the maggots today that we only had 2 thumbs down. I'm very sad. And don't try to make me feel better by giving a fake thumbs down. I want them to be legit. But and look, I don't blame them. They're all butthurt and delicate. It's, considering the circumstance, can you imagine having thrown your lot in with Donald Trump because you thought he wasn't an elite and that he was truly a man of the people, and he believed in religion and God, and religion it was a stock. We'd all be very rich with God and religion. Can you imagine believing that shit? Coming from that guy, the guy who was quoted in an article saying Epstein was a lot of fun to be with, would be the guy that released that stuff. You imagine being somebody who thought that guy was going to be the one who wanted to release all this? Oh, and we might have Fugelsang. That would be lovely. Man, if we had JoJo from Jersey and Fugelsang, that's a Monday morning show. Come on. Anyways, much love to you guys. I'll see you later. And I think, do I have a theme song on the way out? I think so. Yeah, in honor of the Epstein Wars and the fact that Donald Trump's artificial transparency. By the way, you guys, imagine being a maggot and thinking that Donald Trump is being transparent about his health, much less what's in the MOU and the Epstein files. Come on.
You ain't seen nothing. Yeah. We ain't saying nothing.
Just pitiful.
Black bar from my past, can't track this.
See,
screenshots cropped out, can't catch this. If it looks too wild on the axis, highlight, right click, boom, redact this. Redact this. Blood and face, can't fact check the madness. Torn out page from the bad habits atlas. If the story get messy in the ad libs, highlight, right click, boom.
Thank you guys so much.
I was young, I was dumb, I was scrolling. Type way too much, hit send, heart swollen. Now I keep receipts like a lawyer with a folder. But anything risky, get hit with the toner. Whole group chat, got tails, I ain't claim. If my name pop up, that's a typo, blame. Who's that in the pic? Man, that ain't go strange. That's a random stranger with a very close face.
We're about to raid Trucker John as well.
If they ask for the tape, it's a missing file. If they pull up the clip, that's deep fake style. If they show me the proof, I just smile like redacted. Black ball from my past, can't track.
Ooh, look at the subscribers. Come on, you guys. Members, this is lovely. Way to go. Boom.
Redact this. Blur that face, can't fact check the madness. Torn out page from the bad habits atlas. If the story get messy in the ad libs, highlight, right click, boom. Yeah. Redact. If it hit too close, that's a rumor I heard. If the dateline match, that's a clerical error. If the outfit match, that's a popular shirt. If the tattoo match, that's a stock photo search. I'm allergic to question, coughing the light. I just edit the ending, soften the bite. Take the worst 3 parts of the night, then slice like fun was had and we were not. Every X got a chapter I seal. Every text got a gap in the reel. I ain't lying, I'm curating the reveal. Just trimming little bits of the raw, real deal. If you saw, you didn't. If you know, you didn't. If you talk, I'm clipping. If they ask, we glitching. Swipe that name out, crop that frame out. If it made me look foul, delete then fade out. Black ball from my past, can't track this. Screenshots cropped out, can't catch this. If it looks too wild on the axis, highlight, right click, boom, redact this. Redact this. Blur that face, can't fact check the madness. Torn out page from the bad habits atlas. If the story get messy in the ad libs, highlight, right click, boom, redact this.